Hey guys, welcome back. On this channel, we are all about the flowers. So in today's drawing tutorial, I'm going to take you through my step-by-step process for illustrating Ranunculus, Magnolia, and Hyacinth. Hey guys, my name is Shayda Campbell, and today we are going to have some fun illustrating what I consider to be spring flowers. So grab a pencil and maybe a sketch pad, some nice paper, an eraser, and an artist's pen, and a cup of tea. Of course, you gotta have a cup of tea. My favorite is jasmine. What's your favorite tea? If you're a tea drinker, what is the flavor you can't live without? I would love to know. Anyways, grab your pencil, and we're just gonna jump right in. So I am going to start by illustrating Ranunculus. I'm seeing lots of it in the flower shops lately. Even if it's not blooming here, it's definitely around. And so what I do is I start by simply drawing a little circle, maybe an oval actually, and then you're going to do these broken rings around that little oval, like the rings of Saturn, all broken up, and you just keep moving outward and doing more and more of these broken rings. A good tip is to put less of those broken lines above the circle and more of them in front of it or below it, and that will make the flower look like it's sort of not just flat, you know, like it's coming towards you. And then you're going to, at the bottom, when you reach the size of the flower that you want, you're going to start doing these petal shapes, these floppy petals that are all along the front of that ranunculus blossom. Then the stems are probably my favorite part because they're always a bit wonky. They always seem to have a funny kink in a weird spot. So just do that crooked line and then mirror it very close so that you get this rounded, thick stem. And I always see full blossoming ranunculus, they always seem to have one bud or two buds that haven't bloomed yet, so it's nice to put one of those in there. Let's go over it in pen and talk it out again so that you guys can really see what I'm doing. So start with your little oval, and then you're adding all those broken lines around it, more below it or in front of it and less above it, so that it looks like the flower is on an angle to our viewer. Then once it's the size that you like, you can start adding these floppy petal shapes. They're sort of like floppy half circles, and you just kind of join them all up together. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's a flower. It's supposed to look natural and perfectly imperfect. And then of course we do our funny little wonky stem with a kink somewhere in it. Two lines close to each other will make it look like it's this round thick stem, and then a nice little bud goes well with it. Those sort of pair nicely together. Okay, now let's get rid of all those pencil sketches that we initially did. We'll have a nice clean pen illustration, and then we're going to add a little bit of shading. I love to shade with the pen. I think I always did pencil illustration when I was younger, so now that I work mainly in pen, I love to shade. I love to sketch with them. So I am using two. The 01 is a larger nib, and of course the 0.05 is a smaller nib. So that's the actual tip of the pen. And I like to illustrate with the larger sides and then sketch or shade with the smaller size. And that's exactly what you see me doing here, just going in with that very, very tiny nib and adding a little bit of shading to the stems. So I want the stems to be darker because we're not going to color these, or at least I'm doing a black and white illustration today. I want to create some contrast the way you would with color. So I'll do that by coloring the stem darker and having the blossom be a little lighter. That just shows that they're two different colors, even though they're black and white. And then I'm also adding more sketchy lines to the blossom itself. So I'm following the shape or the movement of those initial broken lines and just adding more. And then under some of the little floppy petals, I'm adding these tiny little bits of line shading that sort of come forward and represent a little bit of shadow underneath each little petal. So just making the center really dark, and then of course the top of the stem might be a little darker as if it's in shadow. Okay, that one's all done. So let's move on, and we are going to do Magnolia next. This one is really fun to illustrate. So just start by doing these kind of, gosh, what is that, like a teardrop or an oval shape, and you're going to map out the magnolia blossoms this way. Once you've done that, we'll come in and we'll add 3 petals to the front of each of those teardrop shapes, maybe 2 more in behind. And then they have these funny scraggly little stems. So you can make the stems quite crooked and jagged. I just want to get the angle a little different, but we're doing it in pencil first. You can play around with it and you're going to join all of these blossoms together. So start by mapping out where you want each blossom. Then you do the 3 petals in the front and then 2 more in behind. And the petals can be a bit wonky. I always say the same things over and over, but make them a little funny. This one is going to be actually opening. So 3 petals with another one sort of coming towards the viewer or right at the front. And then I'm just adding these stems, very crooked and jagged, as I said, and they've got all these little nubs, all these little buds, I guess, coming off of them, but that is the Magnolia branch. And we'll do another blossom a little bit smaller up towards the top. And let me go over it in pen so that you can really see what I'm doing. But I start with those 3 big petals in the front. They come to a point, but a rounded point, not too sharp of a point. I'll add 2 more in behind. Don't have to be perfect. They can be a little off center or wonky. We'll make the stems dark, just the same idea as the ranunculus. The blossom is light and the stems are dark, so we have a nice contrast. We show that these items are different colors. For this blossom that's open, I'm going to make the center a little bit darker as well. And I just keep doing my crooked stems with their little nubs coming off. I love Magnolia. They won't bloom here for a little while yet, but they are just so pretty and they always mark spring. It's like one of the first trees to blossom in our area. So, so pretty. And yeah, just continuing on with my stems. And once I am happy with it, I'm just kind of looking, where can I add another little jagged stem to balance out the illustration? Where would that look nice? And then of course, once I am totally done, I'll just erase all of those pencil sketchy lines. And once I have a nice clean illustration, I'll go in with my smaller nib pen and I will start shading. So the Magnolia has this wonderful variation from a pink, a really deep, beautiful magenta right near the bottom of the flower, and then it sort of goes up to this creamy white. So I want to capture that pink shading, but just in black pen. So I'm doing 2 things here. I'm adding color in quotation marks, and I'm also adding shading. And you can see that on this blossom, it's going to be darker at the bottom because that's where the pink is, but it's also going to be darker at the bottom because that's where the light would not hit as much. And the pink tends to kind of go in a little bit of a line up the center of each petal on some of the blossoms, so I'm adding that as well. And for this sort of shading that I do with the pen, I like to hold the pen on quite a bit of an angle, like even more than 45-degree angle. And I think these pens in particular are meant to be held on a would that be a 90-degree angle? But they're meant to be perpendicular to the page. So by holding the pen this certain way and keeping the angle quite sharp between the pen and the page, I can get these sketchy, broken lines, and that really works to my advantage when I want to do this type of shading. And I'm just going to continue and shade all of these blossoms, again adding that detail going up the center of each petal. That would be where that little bit of extra pink is on some of them. And yeah, that is the Magnolia when it is all done. Okay, so last spring flower, we are going to do the Hyacinth. These are starting to show up in the grocery stores all over Canada. And I didn't know if I would be able to draw this. I thought it would just look like a big tube sock, but I'm attempting. So we start with a curved line. That's where the flower will go because they always get heavy and they always have this slump or sag to them. Then on the right, you're going to do 2 large petals. And yeah, we're just doing the initial layout. Where's the blossom? Where's that big stem? And where are those petals going to go? You could do it on any angle or however, but once you've got that done, the hyacinth the flower is made up of all these little tiny flowers, all these little blossoms, and they are just made up by doing a circle for the center, for the stamen, and then 4 or 5 petals. And the petals are kind of long and a little bit pointy, and you can do this area that you've mapped out, you can fill it in with all these little blossoms, but you can also abstract it a little bit and just add little triangle shapes and little petal shapes here and there to fill in. So it's a mix of both the blossoms and then just some little jagged lines to represent petals and that kind of thing. So let's go over it in pen again so you can see it. So two sort of nondescript, long, large shapes to represent those big petals, big leaves that it has. It has quite stiff, firm leaves that spike straight up, and the flower is always the part that can't, hold itself up, that slumps over because of the weight. The stem is like the ranunculus. It is thick and round, so we are just doing 2 lines. And then the flower is made up of all these tiny blossoms. So we start with the circle for each 4 or 5 petals. Probably it is one or the other, but I just didn't look it up. But that's okay, it doesn't matter for these fun illustrative purposes. And you can see I do flowers, and then I also will just add in like a petal shape wherever I need to fill in a little more. But I think if you try to do all tiny blossoms, it might get a bit cluttered and crowded. So it's nice to just do the petal shapes in some areas. Definitely do lots of the little blossoms, but wherever you need a little filler, just put 1 or 2 petals and call it a day. We'll fill all that in. You can kind of step back from it and say, okay, do I need another petal or another blossom anywhere? So you get the shape right. There, I'm happy with that. That looks good. And then again, I've erased all my lines, so I'm ready to do some shading. So I'll come in with that tiny 0.05 nib, and the shading for this one is really about darkening up the center of those tiny blossoms and then just adding a few lines coming out to show that these little blossoms do have a bit of depth, that they, that they're opening up to the light. And so this one's really fun and easy to shade. You can just do it with some simple lines. You don't even need sketchy lines, just very basic, almost contour drawing. Then of course on the leaves, you can get quite sketchy, and they're this big, simple area. So it's a good place to practice your pen shading. And I am just making mine maybe a little darker on the top and the bottom, as if they're curved away from the light and the light is sort of hitting them in the middle. And then the stem, I'll darken on the perimeter, I'll darken it on the outside. Okay, and that is the hyacinth all done. That one for me is spring. That is the smell of spring, and I really need spring to get here now. Well guys, thank you so much for watching today. This is the first of many floral drawing tutorials, so let me know what flowers would you like to see in the next botanical illustration tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you soon with a new video.